Yo, what up, how's it going? And welcome back for another video, and welcome to my PowerPoint presentation where I'm going to give you my top tips to climb to Plat ELO. That's whether you're a silver or gold player and your goal right now is to get to platinum. I have made a top 5 tips to general climbing video. If you haven't checked that one out, I'll leave it in the link in the description below. A lot of the things I talked about in that video are going to be on this video as well because it's transferable. But I talk way more in length in my other video, so if you want to check that one out after this one, then please do so. All right, the first one we're going to talk about, we're going to get right into it, is play and watch a ton. Again, I speak at that in length in the other video, but let's just unpack that right now. So what I mean by this is I think it's, at least from my personal experience and what I've seen from other people, it's really nice whenever you're learning to have a 50-50 split of playing and watching. So split in between that. And what that really means is you're watching like a high elo player, maybe you're watching some guide videos, and you're trying to learn from what they do. And then the other 50% of the time you're playing, and then you implement what you learned into your play. And then after you play, you can watch someone else play and try to think about the things that went wrong in your games and try to figure out solutions to those problems by watching someone better than you play. It can be pretty huge. And the biggest thing that's important whenever we're doing this is to have the right mindset whenever you're watching someone play. You can't just turn on someone's stream and just like listen and think that their thought process is going to implant itself into your mind, and all of a sudden your brain is going to swell up and you're going to hit challenger. It really doesn't work like that. You really have to go in to a stream if you're wanting to learn. If you're in like, I need to get better at this game, I'm going to watch Bebe, I'm going to watch Soju, I'm going to watch Trajan, I'm going to watch whatever. I'm going to watch them because I want to get better. We have to have the right mindset of completely wiping everything you know about the game, or preconceptions. Be willing to be completely wrong. This person that you're going to watch is obviously better than you. Let's say they're a grandmaster player or something like that. They're obviously better than you at the game, and they obviously have created a thought process about the game and the meta that is working because they're at this rank, so it's working, especially if they're currently winning on the patch. And so what you're going to try to do whenever you watch that is basically just copy paste their thought process into your brain, which is fine at the elo you're at. Over time, if you end up getting the diamond, you need to start to branch out and think about how other people think about the game, because a lot of people make their own preconceptions about the game that are self-limiting to them getting better. And right now, you can adopt other people's bad habits because you're going to overwhelmingly take in good habits about the game. And so it's fine to just take one player's view of the game as gospel and how they play. That's fine at this level. And so whenever you're watching, the way you get their thought process, the way you copy paste how they think, is for you to put yourself in their seats whenever you're playing. Every single round that they're playing, whenever you're watching, think, oh, okay, what would I do right here? Oh, I should sell a lease here and do this. Oh, I should make 40 gold, or I should hold on to these units, or I think I'm going to hold this comp the rest of the game. I'm not going to pivot. And the next round, the streamer does a pivot. So put yourself in their situation. Think about what you would do. And whenever the streamer or player does something different than you, and they inevitably will because they're different rank than you, think about why they did that. Ask those why questions. Why did they do that? Why did they do that? I wouldn't have done that. And really try to find solutions. Try to find answers to why they did that. And at first you won't be able to do that, but as you get better more often than it was before, your decisions will start to be the same decisions as the player you're watching, and you'll start to just like know a lot more about the game and be viewing the game from a different perspective. And implementing that you'll see a huge difference in how your games feel and how your rank improves. Boom. All right, number 2 is going to be keep up with the meta. Okay, this is the first 2 tips, by the way, is the same thing I'm going to say at the beginning of probably every single climbing video, are these 2 things. Watch people play and keep up with the meta. And they kind of work hand in hand, because if you watch someone play who's a high level player, you'll start to learn the meta better by doing that, because they're playing at the highest level of play, which will apply to all elos. And that's going to be our first thing. If it works in high elo, it'll work in low elo. There's a little bit of variance to this, but for the most part, if it works in high elo, it works in low. And like, this is expressible by whenever I play in low elo, I'll play exactly how I play in high elo, and it's a free first. And that's just how it's a free top 2. And so if it works in high elo, it's going to work in your elo. There are things that might work better in your elo slightly, or work better than it would work in high elo. But if it works in high elo, it'll always work in low elo. So just have that mindset, and don't, whenever you're watching people play and whenever you keep up with meta, like, well, that wouldn't work in my meta. It's not League. It's not like League. TFT is very different. Okay, how do we actually keep up with the meta? I'm gonna give you guys a bunch of resources. You can watch meta updates. So a lot of people do these. Like I do some meta updates sometimes, like a top 5 comps for a patch and stuff like that. Players like GV8, he does a meta report every 2 days or so where he talks about the meta, and it's a funny show. If you haven't seen it, check it out. And then there's people who provide guides and stuff like that, like Bunny Muffins and myself. And yeah, there's just unlimited resources. In worst case scenario, you go to one of those like websites that post builds, and you can look at builds there, and you can find out what's meta. But I personally don't like those websites very much. I think they're, I don't know. Anyways, sorry. Tuning into high elo stream before you play. This is a good strategy. I implemented this a lot whenever I was like a diamond player and I was trying to get better. Before I would play, I would watch someone I know was better. For example, at the time, I would watch St. Vicious play in the morning, and I'd watch him play for an hour, 2 hours, something like that. And then I would try to learn from that and implement that to my games. I played for like 4 to 6 hours. And then I would go back and I'd watch St. Vicious play for another 2 hours that night to and try to look for answers to some of the problems I had in my games earlier that day. And that was a big way I got better. Another way you can do this, another way you can find them on meta, look at comps lists. A lot of people make comps lists. I make a comps list for each patch usually. St. Vicious makes them. A bunch of people make them, and then comps lists will be on those websites you can go to and all that good stuff that post builds all the time. And I'll say this again, this is the biggest advantage you can get in low elo. Whenever I play in low elo, people firmly don't understand meta. Like firmly don't understand the meta. If you're in that elo, you definitely don't understand the meta. And so I'll go in there and people will be playing comps that have never been meta, not even actual comps, or they'll be playing like they'll be forcing things that have been patched out like 2 patches ago. And so if you understand the meta more than your opponents, this is probably the biggest advantage you can get in that elo, because if you're actually playing meta comps, you will climb. If you actually just know how to construct comps and you start to get a little bit better at the game, you will climb for sure just by playing meta. Okay, this one's going to be our mindset one that we're going to talk about. I always like to talk about mindset. I think it's very important whenever you're climbing. But be willing to lose and don't play desperate. And we'll unpack what that don't play desperate means in just a minute. And that I might be projecting some personal feelings out there about how I feel when I play sometimes. But you're going to take some L's along the way, and it's part of learning. It's very important just look back at all of your games as a learning experience. Whenever you lose, look back at look at that as a learning experience, and don't have the mindset of I got unlucky. Obviously there's RNG in the game, but luck does not matter at all. If you are below like D2, luck in your game does not matter at all. I can guarantee, and I know this to be true because I do it, I can guarantee like if I or another player similar to my rank went into a silver or gold or platinum game and we were really trying to win the game, I could have the most unlucky game of my life, and I can guarantee I will top 3. I could have the most unlucky game of TFT I've ever had, and I can guarantee I will still top 3 if I'm really trying to win that game. And so what I'm trying to express, obviously I'm better than you are at the game, that's why you're watching the video. What I'm trying to express is luck does not impact your games at all in those elos. Obviously when you're at a lower skill level, you will feel it more. But the point I'm trying to make is you can overcome your bad RNG by getting better at the game at this elo, because the players the players aren't good. Let me just be frank. The players are not good. So you can overcome by just getting better. So don't think about the RNG in the game and how unlucky you were. You weren't unlucky. You weren't. You can always overcome in that elo. Okay, be willing to lose and reflect back on the game and what decisions you could have made differently. So that's what I'm talking about, that learning experience, how to look at a game as a learning experience. Every time you lose, just reflect back and think about the decisions you made in that game that directly impacted your loss. Whenever you're doing this, you'll learn how to do this better over time, but whenever you're doing this, be really careful of hindsight bias. And what hindsight bias is like when you look at things and you look at the outcome and you think back on like one decision that you would have made with knowledge that you had later. So like, for example, if a blue buff on your Yone would have saved, would have top forged you, like you got a blue buff on your Yone, and the hindsight you have from that is, well, if I would have taken tier on first carousel, I would have been able to make blue buff. If that was a blue buff for Yone on stage 5, if that is like what you come away with the game with, then that is an obvious hindsight bias, because you can't make decisions in your game you can't make decisions on like first carousel or second carousel for like a legendary unit you might hit on stage 5. You know what I mean? Like that would be obvious hindsight. And so be really careful of hindsight bias. I very poorly explained hindsight bias, but the example I think was good. Okay, try to make decisions from a calm thought and not a stressful one. This is like a 5-head, like just don't be stressed, Pog. No, but what I mean by this is like me kind of like projecting how I feel whenever I'm losing games. But do you ever feel like you're just like, you'll level up like 2 rounds too early, or you'll roll like 40, or you roll like 20 more gold than you really should roll at that time. And you're doing that because you're like, I just really want to hit Olaf, and if I just leveled and rolled 20 gold, I might hit him. I might hit 3 Olaf, and then my team comp would be saved. I mean, obviously sometimes you have to do that, but like I'll have games where I'm sitting at like 80 health, I got a lot of gold, and I'll just level and make like really stressful decisions because I just want to get my comp, and I'm gonna get contested, and I'm scared. Just try to not do that. I don't know if I'm just projecting how I feel in games sometimes, but if you're feeling like that, try to reset and like don't play through that thought process, and don't play tilted. So that's a good one. All right, number 4 is slam your items and use item holders. Okay, so this is also going to be a big advantage in low elo. I can't tell you how many games I'm in when I'm playing on a Smurf where I'll just look at benches and people have 30 health and have 8 items on their bench and they don't slam items in the early game. So this might seem very simple to you, but if you're not doing this, and if you're not doing this every game, and then you start doing it, you will save 40 health over like the first 3 to 4 stages every game just by slamming items if you weren't slamming items before. It's just to save health. You got to save health. You can't think about your level 8 board the whole game. Sometimes you got to think about your level 5 board. And you know, obviously you're going to have to transition to level 8 board, so you need to think about it at all times, but you need to put some more time into your level 5 board and make it stronger so that you can save HP in your games, unless you're trying to do an econ strategy. But for now, just think about saving health in your games, and you'll see a lot of progress in your rank, especially. And so how do we do that? Play some flex items. As you get in higher elo, build specific items are a little bit more important, but in low elo, it's not really that important. Just slamming early items and transferable items that can work in a lot of builds are going to net you a lot of HP and a lot of wins. And so example of flexible items are Hand of Justice, works in virtually every build. Defensive items work in every build, like a Bramble Vest, a Declaw, a Sunfire Cape especially. And Aura items work in every build. They work a little bit better in some other builds than others, but they pretty much work in every build. That's going to be your Zeeks, your Lockets, and your Chalices. And so make sure you build those early and often. It'll save you a lot of HP. If you're not doing that and you start doing it, you'll see a huge difference in your games. Find direction from your items in Chosen, not the other way around. So you're going to find direction in your games, or from not from like your champions that you're hitting. You're going to find direction in your game from your items that you slam. So let's say you just natural 2 bows early in the game. Well, you can slam an RFC, and that'll tell you that if you're going to transition into another comp, like maybe you're not playing a reroll comp, whenever you transition later in the game, you're going to be looking for units who can use that item. Examples of that would be like Kael, Olaf, Tryndamere, something like that. If I saw those items, I'd be like, okay, I'm looking for Olaf and I'm looking for Kael. That's immediately what I would think if I got those 2 bows in the early game and I wasn't going to play Zed. That's exactly what I think for my level 8 comp. So let your items give you direction. Don't be scared to build them. So you can just build them early game. Don't think about like, oh, I got all these items. I got Olaf and Kael items, but what if I hit Asol? You're not. You're gonna play Kael or Olaf most likely in that game. Sometimes you can make like really weak versions of your build work. But let your items guide you into what you're playing if you're not going to be rerolling a comp. Use a transition unit for your items. So we'll talk about that. If you're going to be transitioning to a like 4-cost carry, For example, like Kale or Olaf, just like we talked about. Well, a champion that uses Kale and Olaf items really well is Zed. So you can have Zed hold items for a Kale. So Zed is very good at RFC. It's his best item. It's Kale's best item, and it's one of Olaf's best items. Think about if you're trying to build towards a late game carry. In your comps, in your early game and mid game comps, think about what units could use those items and go ahead and build them. Even if they're units that you want to have in your build later, but they make really good use of the items, make really good use of that item, but you still want them in your build later, you're just gonna have to remake that unit later in the game. You just want to have the items on the best user you can possibly find in your comp. Yeah. Okay, build real comps. Okay, I think I talked a little bit about this earlier. But build actual comps, and we'll talk about what an actual comp is. You can easily do this by just copy and pasting meta comps. So you can look at someone's comp list, copy and paste, boom, that comp will have everything you need. You'll probably get a lot of victories that way. But you probably won't learn all that much about the game, but you'll get a lot of victories by just copy and pasting meta comps. But I'm going to teach you guys what every comp needs. There's a couple of exceptions, brawlers, that don't really follow these rules. But for the most part, this is what you need to think about whenever you're building a comp. You need to have a front line. So you need to have a main tank and some secondary tanks or whatever. So if your front line is a Sejuani with some tank items and an Aatrox, well, that would fit your bill for having a front line. Gotta have things to be auto attacked. You have to have a main DPS carry. So for example, if you're playing sharpshooters, which no one really does, let's say you're playing. Never mind. Never mind. Let's say you're playing Slayers. Let's say you're playing Slayers, and the Slayers you have are Olaf, Tryndamere, and Pyke. Well, you're going to have a main DPS carry, and let's say that's Olaf in your comp, and then you're going to need somebody else to kind of do some splash damage in the fight to kind of chunk people down so your Olaf can kill them, and that could be Tryndamere, or it could be another Slayer if you had a different Slayer. But you have Tryndamere in there to soften them up so that Olaf can carry a little bit better. And so you want to have a main DPS and a secondary DPS, because sometimes your fights, your main DPS will just have really bad fight RNG, and if you don't have a second DPS in your comp, then it's going to be very difficult. Then you're going to lose a lot of HP just by RNG. But if you have that second carry, you can save a lot of HP or win some fights where you would have lost them. So it's really huge to have a secondary carry if you can. And you need utility units. So utility units would be something like Sejuani and Aatrox. Those are also frontline units, but they CC, they de-corner people. Another utility units would be like Mystics, like a Zillion, like a Yumi. Spirits would be considered utility. So anything that like buffs your team in sort of like an indirect way. Because CC would allow your DPSs to get off damage and prevent the enemy from getting damage. So it's kind of like in an indirect way. Increases your damage by having utility and CC. And so that's really important whenever you're building your comps. And that, for example, is the reason why 6 Slayer is, it's hard for 6 Slayer to be meta, because it's just so much better to play like Sejuani and Aatrox in your build, rather than play Zed and Darius. So that's why that is. And then as you get better, you'll be able to slot in units for specific lobbies. So you might be in a lobby where you're running, for example, Nico Vanguard Mystics, and you're playing like 4 Vanguards, 4 Mystics, but the last player left in the lobby with you is a full AD person. Maybe he's just playing Olaf and Tryndamere carry. Then it might be better to switch to 6 Vanguards in that situation, rather than having 4 Mystics. So as you get better at the game, you'll know when you can slot in synergies for like the late game, the hyper late game, or whenever you can tell what people are going to play once you get to the mid game, stuff like that. And think about whenever you're building comps, how can I help my carry better? And so, for example, whenever you're playing Slayers, I'll use Slayers again. Whenever you're playing Olaf carry, well, you don't play 6 Slayers to give him more damage. The way that you can help Olaf carry better is by putting some CC units around him so people can be stunned, so Olaf can kill him, because his damage comes out kind of slow. And so if the enemy has a way to heal themselves or shield themselves, then it's going to be hard for Olaf to kill them down sometimes. So it's better not to have Olaf have more damage. It's better to have people CC people so Olaf can kill them. And so you got to think about like, how can I make my carry a little bit harder? And that's going to make your comps so much better. Anyways, guys, that's going to be it for the video. These are my tips. I hope they weren't too much like my general climbing tips, but if you want to climb, you got to do those first 2 things. It doesn't matter what elo you're in. But I hope you guys liked it, and if you did, then please check out my stream I stream nearly every day at twitch.tv/TrajanTFT, and that's mainly where I do my stuff, and I just post guides here and VODs whenever I feel like it. But anyways, guys, I really appreciate you, and I'll see you on the next video, or I'll see you on the next stream. All right, bye-bye. Bye-bye. Hey, dude. Bye.